Soldados del Señor Jesús, pendones levantad, luchad valientes que la luz muy pronto acabará. Al enemigo combatid con gran celeridad, por fe en Jesús al mundo vil podréis así ganar. Fe la victoria es, fe la victoria es. Fe la victoria es del mundo vencedora, su amor es bondad, su ley herencia fiel, la senda de la santidad seguimos por doquier, por fe en Jesús el Salvador y perdido ración, y me prepara el Salvador en gloria y mansión. Fe la victoria es, fe la victoria es, fe la victoria es del mundo vencedora. All right, the memory verse, Acts 8:37. Y Felipe dijo, si crees de todo corazón, bien puedes. Y respondiendo dijo, creo que Jesucristo es el Hijo de Dios. Let's repeat it together. Y Felipe dijo, si crees de todo corazón, bien puedes. Y respondiendo dijo, creo que Jesucristo es el Hijo de Dios. So let's talk about that word by word. Y Felipe, Felipe is obviously Philip in Spanish. Dijo means said. Si crees, we've learned the word si, means if. Basically, you believe, if thou believest. De todo corazón, with all your heart. Si crees de todo corazón, bien puedes. He's saying you're well able to do so, or you may do so. Y respondiendo, now you should know respondiendo, because we worked on these a while back. These are the ones where we learned the verb estar, and we would combine it with certain things for a different variation on the present tense. Like, for example, we would say, estoy hablando. Does everybody remember that? It's going back a ways, but that means I am speaking. Okay, it's another variation on the present tense, and we talked a little bit about that. Well, that's what's going on here, because you could say also, estoy respondiendo. Okay? And that would basically mean I am responding, or I am answering. Okay? Now, if you just take away the estoy, and you have what? Just answering, respondiendo. So what it's saying here is, he's saying, you know, if thou believest with all thine heart, thou mayest. It says, y respondiendo, and answering, he said, dijo. Has everybody got that? Y respondiendo, dijo, and responding, he said, or answering, he said, I believe, creo que Jesucristo es el Hijo de Dios. I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. So does everybody understand that, respondiendo? So it's really easy to form that, and we worked on it a while back. This is just a quick review. But basically, if we have AR verbs, like, for example, hablar, we basically just lose the ending and just add an ando. Okay, so if it was pagar, it would be pagando. Okay, so that's a review. We've already done that. And then with ER and IR verbs, it's similar. Let's say we say comer, we lose the ending, and we add yendo, I-E-N-D-O. You see that in the verse, respondiendo, so it would be comiendo. Vivir would be viviendo. Okay? So you just have to remember those two endings, ando and yendo. And then, let's see here, vocabulary list. Como means how, que means what, quien means who, donde means where, a donde, notice that's one word, means to where, de donde, two separate words, means from where, cuando means when, cuanto means how much, or if it's plural, cuantos, it would be how many. Cuál means which, and por qué means why. Now, what do you notice that all of these question words have in common? Look at all 10 of them and tell me what you see. They all have accent marks, even if they don't need them, okay? Like, for example, como, there's no reason for it to have an accent mark, because It ends in a vowel, so the accent would be on the second to last syllable anyway. Same with K is following a natural pattern. You know, donde, but they all have accent marks because question words pick up an accent mark. That's how you can tell the difference between this word right here, como, which is asking the question how, and this word right here, como. Now this can mean two different things. This can either be I eat, right? Comer, como. But this can also be the word like or as. Okay? And then also, same thing with K. If you take away the accent mark from K, it becomes that instead of what. The question word what becomes the word that. And then same thing with por K with the question word with the accent mark means why. You take away the accent mark, run it together into one word, it means because. Okay? So we're going to talk about making questions in Spanish. Now we're going to learn 3 ways to make a question in Spanish. The first one is to change the order of the subject and the verb. Okay? So our first sentence that we have there is Juan tiene $5, which means what? John has $5. Now if we were to turn this into a question, we're going to start with an upside down question mark. And then we're just going to change the order of the subject and the verb. It's a very simple sentence. Tiene Juan, you know, $5? Now it's a question. Does John have $5? Now in English we do this a little bit differently. We would do it like in English we would say, you know, John has $5, right? But we could also say John does have $5. And in English, we'd kind of do something similar because we would just basically swap these two right here, right? Does John have $5? So in Spanish, they don't have the does form that we have. And so they just go from Juan tiene $5 to tiene Juan $5, okay? Now the next example there, Pedro, this one's a little more complicated. Pedro ha prometido a venir. What does that mean? What does prometer mean? Prometido. Promise. So he's saying, John has promised to come. Okay? So if we want to turn that into a question, we're going to swap the order again. ¿Ha Pedro prometido? So the word order changes. Instead of being Pedro ha prometido, a statement, if we swap the conjugated verb and the subject there, ha Pedro prometido? Now notice there's a difference in the inflection of your voice as well. Okay? When you say Juan ha prometido, you're going down at the end. Okay? But when you say ha, notice the upward slant of your voice. Ha Juan prometido? Okay? So there's a difference in the inflection also. So you have to make it sound like a question, basically. Now, look at the third example, though. This is a sentence that does not contain a subject. As often in Spanish, the sentences don't contain a subject because you can tell by the conjugated verb who the subject is. If I were to say, for example, eres cansado, that means you are tired. But if I phrased it as a question and I said, eres cansado, it doesn't change any word order, we just change the inflection. But let's say we had the subject in that exact sentence and we said, tú, and we're emphasizing the subject, tú eres cansado. Then how would we make it into a question now? Exactly, we'd say, ¿eres tú cansado? Okay, everybody got that? So that's the first way to make a question. You just change the order of the subject and the conjugated verb. You just swap them around and suddenly you have a question. Number 2, you can add verdad or no to the end of a statement. So this is a statement. Usted va a la iglesia. You are going to church. Okay? But if we want to make that into a question, we would just make the exact same statement. Usted va a la iglesia. And then we just throw this on the end. Verdad? Does anybody know what the word verdad means? Truth. Truth. So you basically make a statement and then say truth. But in English, what would we say? Right? We would say, you're going to church, right? So we're saying the same exact thing as in Spanish. We make a statement, and then we just throw this on the end. You're going to church, right? Or, if we were to do the negative version, we'd say, you're going to church, aren't you? Well, in Spanish, you would just say, usted va a la iglesia, no? Now, this is very useful when you're talking to someone, because you'll be explaining something to them, and you want to make sure that they're understanding. You know when you have a conversation with people, you'll be saying, right? You'll tell them something, and then you want to see if they agree with you or not. You say, right? Well, that's going to be verdad. And this is going to be very useful when you're talking to people, because you're going to make a statement, you're going to want to know if they understand or if they agree with what you're saying. You just throw it on the end, verdad? So that's a very useful expression to learn. But then number 3, you can use a question word to form a question. Now, when using a question word, if there is a subject and a verb in the sentence, you're going to reverse the order, just like in point 1. So here, if we want to say, ¿Qué hace la mujer? That's a question, right? We're asking, what is the woman doing? Now notice, we didn't say ¿Qué la mujer hace? We still got to change the order. ¿Qué hace la mujer? We still reverse the order. Look at the second. ¿Por qué ha él recibido el galardón? Why has he, you see that? ¿Por qué ha él, has he received the reward? Why has he received the reward? ¿Por qué ha él recibido el galardón? Notice that the subject and the conjugated verb are reversed. Look at the next example. ¿Cómo se llama usted? Okay? Now, if we were making a statement, we would say, Usted se llama David. What does se llama mean? Llamarse? It's reflexive. It means to call yourself, to call oneself. So, ¿Cómo se llama usted? Is a question. What does he call himself? We would say in English, what is your name? So I would say, ¿Cómo se llama, or no, not him, because it's usted. ¿Cómo se llama usted? This would be a polite way of asking, what is your name? And then what would be the answer? Me llamo Esteban. Okay, and that's a little bit of review from a few weeks ago when we did reflexive verbs. So the last example, ¿A dónde va usted? Again, notice, the subject and the verb have swapped positions. ¿A dónde va usted? What does that mean? Where are you going? Okay? Where are you going? Now, what if I said this? ¿De dónde eres? Where are you from? Because de dónde, remember that's a term that we learned up there, from where? You could say, ¿de dónde es? You know, where is it from? Okay? ¿De dónde es usted? You know, where are you from? Would be another polite way of saying it. So does anybody have any questions about that?
On number 2, when you have for God and no,
Yes.
do you still put the verb in front of the subject and add that on the end, or would that not be proper? Like if you put va usted?
That would not work. Because if you said va usted a la iglesia, it's already a question. So if you threw that word on the end, it would not be grammatically correct. It would not make sense. Good question though. Because if you swap the word order, then the verdad and the no would be totally redundant. So this is more like you're making a statement, right? Okay? So, because not always do you want to ask someone a question. Sometimes you're telling them something because you're pretty sure that that's what they think or that's what they're going to do. Like, you're pretty sure they're going to church. Now, if you don't know the answer, then you'd ask them, ¿Va usted a la iglesia? But if you already kind of know the answer, you're pretty sure that they're going, or you'll be surprised if they're not going, then you'd say, ¿Usted va a la iglesia, verdad? ¿Usted va a la iglesia? No. You know, and then that's where you throw that on the end to turn it into a question. Now, when you're dealing with question words, here, like I said, you swap the order, but sometimes the subject is what the question is. Okay? Like, for example, with the question word quién. When we're dealing with quién, that means who. A lot of times, the thing that you don't know is the subject. That's what you're asking. So the question word becomes the subject. Does everybody understand what I mean? Like, for example, if I wanted to take this sentence here and turn it into a question using the term quién, okay, this is going to be the subject because I'm asking quién va a la iglesia. Okay? So this one's a little bit different because
we don't have any question about swapping the verb and the subject, because this is basically the subject, the unknown. That's what we're asking. Okay? Or if I wanted, you could use K this way as well to replace the subject. Like, ¿Qué es la verdad? What is the truth? Or what is truth? Who asked that question in the Bible? Pilate. Pontius Pilate, right? ¿Qué es la verdad? Or ¿Qué es verdad? I don't remember which one it says in the Spanish Bible. But basically, sometimes the question word will replace the subject, and then you don't really have a question about word order. But when you do have a subject and a verb in a question, you're going to swap them around. You're going to swap that word order. So we've done an example for como. We've done qué, quién, dónde, a dónde, de dónde, cuándo. Okay, let's use that one. Let's make a sentence using the word cuándo. Okay, so let's say we want to say, when does church end? Okay, or let's just say, when does the service end, right? When is the service going to end? We would say what? Cuando termina. So we put the verb first, right? Because we got to swap that word order when we're dealing with questions. Cuando termina el servicio? And that means, when does church end? Okay? Let's do an example with cuánto, how much. And with this one, we can ask, for example, how much something costs. So we could say, cuánto, put the accent because it's a question word, even though it normally wouldn't need it. Cuánto cuesta esto libro? How much does this book cost? Esto libro. This book. How much does this book cost? ¿Cuánto cuesta eso libro? Okay? What else have we got here? Let's say we did this in plural. If we wanted to use the how many form instead of how much, we could say how many. ¿Cuántos libros tiene él? Okay? Now, ¿cuántos libros kind of goes together because we're saying how many books. That's why the word order is like that. ¿Cuántos libros? How many books? Okay, tiene él, notice. The verb comes first, then the subject, because we're in a question. So that's the way it works with question words. You swap the subject and the verb word order. So, ¿cuántos libros tiene él? We mean, how many books does he have? Okay? And then the only other one that we haven't done is the word cuál. Okay? We could say, for example, ¿cuál libro es tu favorito? Right? Which of these books is your favorite? ¿Cuál libro es tu favorito? Or what is your favorite book? Okay? Which, we would sometimes translate this as what? A lot of times. Like we would say, for example, what church do you go to? Whereas they would say, which church do you go to? So they use the word qual a lot more than K. They don't use K to describe when we're talking about which one. They never do that, as we do, okay? So it's always going to be qual. ¿Cuál libro es tu favorito? Okay, ¿cuál iglesia? Which church is what you would say, okay? For example, which church do you attend? So does anybody have any question about these question words or forming questions? Pretty simple, right? Pretty easy. All right, let's go ahead and sing our song then before we go. Let's sing it one more time. And we're going to sing Faith is the Victory, Fe la Victoria es. Let's sing it out in the first verse. Soldados del Señor Jesús, pendones levantar, luchar valientes que la luz muy pronto acabará. Al enemigo combatir con gran celeridad, por fe en Jesús al mundo vir, podréis así ganar. Fe la victoria es, fe la victoria es, fe la victoria es del mundo vencedora.
Su amor, perdones de bondad, su ley, herencia fiel. La senda de la santidad seguimos por doquier. Por fe en Jesús el Salvador y perdido oración. Y me prepara el Salvador en gloria y mansión. Fe la victoria es, fe la victoria es, fe la victoria es del mundo vencedora. Al que venciere Dios dará ropaje sin igual. Su nombre allá confesará Jesús el inmortal. Nuestra alma por la eternidad a Dios alabará, pues por la fe y la santidad al mundo vencerá. Fe la victoria es, fe la victoria es, fe la victoria es del mundo vencedora. Now let me point out just a few things about the song quickly that we didn't talk about. But notice there's a lot of future tense in this. Remember last week we learned about the future tense, so this will be a good review of that. Notice the fourth line, muy pronto acabará. Does anybody remember what acabar means? That verb, acabar? Remember acabarse? Means to come to an end, to run out is what that means. And then look at al enemigo combatir con gran celeridad. That's a command, combatir. And he's saying, combat the enemy with great zeal. Por fe en Jesús al mundo vil podréis así ganar. And then let me find another future tense, because that's what I wanted to show you. Look at, for example, the third line of the last verse. Su nombre allá confesará. Okay? So confesar means obviously to confess. So confesará means he will confess, future tense. And then look at the fifth line, or sixth line, a Dios alabará. That's talking about he will praise God, okay? And then, pues, por la fe y la santidad. What is, does anybody know what santidad means? Does anybody have a guess? What's that?
Saint or sanctified.
It comes from saint and sanctified, but what would be the noun? Because la santidad is a noun. What would be the noun corresponding with sanctify or saint would be holiness. Right? Santidad. Okay. The word, and you can even learn this just from reading in the King James Bible, comparing the Old Testament to the New Testament. Okay. You'll find that in the Old Testament, part of the tabernacle is called the holy place. Remember? And then in the New Testament, it's called the sanctuary. Okay. In the Old Testament, you had the most holy place. In the New Testament, it's called the holiest of all. So there's slight differences in wording that help you understand what words mean. And a saint would mean holy one, is what that would mean. And for example, in Spanish, the Holy Bible is called La Santa Biblia, okay? And then the alabará, pues por la fe y la santidad, by faith and holiness, al mundo vencerá. So what do you think vencer means? To conquer, okay? Remember the famous Vini, Vidi, Vinci? You know what I'm talking about? In Latin? Do you know what I'm talking about? Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Yeah, it's a famous statement in Latin. So, yeah, that means to conquer. So he's saying he will conquer the world. Vencerá. So the future tense is used a lot in the song.